Hello everyone and welcome to a new Lifehack. This is Patrick from NUMECA Ingenieurbüro, the Cadence CFD channel partner in Germany. And today I would like to give you a brief introduction in creating your own customized user interface in Fidelity, which in the end could look something like this. And why do we want to do that? Because basically it's a very elegant solution how users can, or where the script can collect user input. You could use it to customize and facilitate your own workflows in Fidelity. And I'm sure there are numerous other applications that probably you can think of. We will be doing this by using the PySide library. The PySide library is the official Python module for the Qt framework. And for those of you who don't know Qt or Qt, there are also various forms how you can pronounce it. It's a C++ framework for creating desktop applications. And basically those applications can be written about overall platforms, so Windows, macOS, Linux, it doesn't matter. And it's also the framework that's used for Fidelity. So maybe before we start, I will give you a very short example of how this might look like in action. So let's say, for instance, I will open Fidelity here on our cluster. Let's say we have some sort of application. In my case, it's a radial compressor, and I have a whole bunch of simulation that I would like to post-process or maybe just analyze very quickly. And what I have done here is I have created a very simple script structure which allows me to, for instance, select these computations. And now I would like to plot some sort of variable that I'm interested in. So what I can do is I can run a Python script on this selection. And I'm selecting this script right here. And this script essentially will launch a GUI, which in turn will give me the available variables for these simulations. And now I would like to plot them. So I will select, for instance, the inlet mass flow for the x-axis, and let's say efficiency for the y-axis. And in the same time, I would like to export all these variables. I will show you in a minute which variables I'm referring to here. So I will just say results and say apply. And now the information is collected. And in my case, I will directly get a figure from the variable that I just selected. So on the x-axis, I have my inlet mass flow. On the y-axis, I have my efficiency. And additionally, I have created some output. In my case, it's a JSON file and a TXT file. And these files essentially contain all the variables for the simulations that I just selected. And we will get back to that in a minute. But basically, that's one possible applications among numerous different ones that you can probably think of. So let's go back to the presentation. And in the next step, I will talk a little bit about how you can do this. I will also show you in a minute where you can find this in the user guide. I chose to create a slightly different approach or example as it is shown in the user guide, so you directly have different examples that you can work with. So in order to create a user interface on top or within a script that you apply in Fidelity, so something like this, you will need two Python scripts. And in my example here, I chose to name them dosomething.py and GUI dosomething.py. And they should be both in the same directory. You can, of course, change the name, but it's currently best practice to name them similar. But the script, which I will explain in more detail in a minute, that holds or sets up the user interface, has the GUI in front of it in the name. So what are these scripts doing? Essentially, we have this script right here, which is also selected by the user when he launches it in Fidelity. And this script will handle all the main steps in Fidelity. In the example later, this will become more clear, but basically this is launched by the user. It handles the steps in Fidelity and it calls this script which defines the user interface or the GUI. So this script here builds this structure. So here we have the main window, we have a frame, and we have different GUI components. So here we have a line edit, for instance, we have checkboxes, we have a browser, and the way this user interface here is built, this is all defined in this script. And this script will also collect the input that is given by the user. So all the input that is given here is collected within this script and then transferred back to this do-something.py in this case. I will be going into a very simple example in a minute, but this is essentially the structure that you have to keep. So maybe I will go to an example here. I have it in the slides, but we will also be looking at it in the monitor. Maybe let's start here. This is an example for the do-something.py. So here we import some libraries. Be sure to import the PySide wrapper, which is located under scripts modules within the Python folder. I will also be showing this in a minute. And then in this line right here, you import the second script. Then, of course, you always protect your main code with this if condition right here. And then what we are essentially doing is we execute or we call the other script, which will set up the GUI. Then the GUI opens and the user can enter his inputs. And all these inputs will be collected in this variable right here. And then we have an if-else condition. So if the user has clicked apply, I will show you that in a second, get the user input. In this case, the input is the selected value of a dropdown. And then in my simple example, I simply print a GUI banner in Fidelity that shows which selection the user has done. But of course, this can get way more complicated. So for instance, in the other example that I showed, here I would collect the selected variables for my plot and then handle these variables further in the script. So this is what the do-something.py could look like. Very simple. And then here we have the GUI do-something.py. And this might look a little bit more complicated, but essentially all what we are doing here, and I think it's probably better if we take a look at this in the editor. So in the script, we have a class, which is here called make GUI. Here we import this module right here. And then we start to build the user interface. So in this line right here, we create the window. These are all predefined methods. So if you would do this from scratch in PySide, you would probably need a lot more lines of code. But here we made sure that you can create this interface with a couple of lines. So here we build the window with a title and a minimum width. We then create a main frame, which is simply a method from this class right here. And within this main frame, you can add different GUI components. So in my case, for instance, here I create a dropdown where the user has different options to select. Here in this case, it's option 1, 2, 3, and I provide a default option. But there are numerous other possibilities. So you could add an entry row where you can just enter some string, an integer or a double. Be sure to be careful because there You might need different methods if you want to enter an integer or a double. You can add checkboxes, you can add labels, buttons, etc., etc. Then here, and keep in mind here we are still within the constructor, so here we define all the attributes of this class. We have a method after this called getValues, and essentially this method will collect the user input and then will later return it to the other script. I hope this is making sense to you. It will maybe become more clear in a minute. And then here we have a public function, and this one is actually important because this is the function that will be called from the do something script. So if we go back to the presentation really quickly, this function right here, or this, this script right here will be selected by the user and called in Fidelity, and it will call the call function of this script. We will see that in a minute. So this is what's being called, and as you can see, it will create an instance of this class. It will create the user interface, and it will return the values that the user has been given. So I will just execute this script here to give you to make this more clear. Let me just exit the presentation mode. I will go to my Fidelity instance. So all I do is I go up here and say run Python script, and I will launch the do something.py. So what's happening now is, let me go back to maybe the presentation. I executed this script. So now it has called the GUI.something, the call function, as you can see here. And what I will be doing now is, as the user, I will provide input. So let's go to Fidelity. As you can see here, now I have my dropdown. I'm sorry for the back and forth. And here I have the options that I have created in the script. So I have option 1, 2, 3. Let's say I select option 2 and say apply. And now what's going to happen is it will print a banner with the option that I selected. Here, my first GUI in Fidelity, option 2. And that's essentially what I did here in the script. So if I go back, here we have the structure that I created. And here it is collected and then transferred back to the user. I know this might be a little bit confusing. So what we will be doing is we will provide these examples to you, and you can just play around with it. Maybe let me also show you where you can find this in the Cadence Doc Assistant. So as soon as you press F1 in Fidelity, the Doc Assistant will open. You can enter this window and say Python. Then let's wait a second. Then in my case here, you can scroll all the way down, and it has this right here where it shows you how to add a GUI to a Python script. And they will provide you with some explanations and an example how you can build this step by step. So here you have a few of the methods that I already showed you. Here you have the methods used or necessary to create the GUI components. And here you have a very simple example that you can work with. So let me go back to my presentation. Maybe where or what are different applications that you can use this for. Let's say, for instance, you can create cutting planes where the user provides a variable or some location where the cutting plane should be created. You can use it to duplicate a simulation or to import a text file with monitoring points, or for instance, points for auto seal. And I would like to point out that, for instance, these scripts right here are already done. They are as templates in the Fidelity installation directory. And we will be linking a video from our Cadence colleagues, from our colleagues at Cadence, who also did a video on these examples. And in my case, I used it to write a script where I can interactively plot available tabular data in Fidelity. And I will also be providing this script, so you have maybe an example that you can use also for you. Right. So I think that's pretty much all I wanted to show today. I hope I was somehow able to convey the general methodology here. Essentially, I would suggest that you take a look at this again. This is something that you have to understand, and the rest is basically just coding. You can take the examples and make your way from there. So while I was reviewing the video, I noticed there are actually two more pieces of information that I have to provide. One is the settings in your interpreter. So please keep in mind that what I showed you will essentially work starting from Fidelity 24.1. However, some of the keyword arguments that I use here are only available in 24.2. So the scripts that we will provide will work in 24.2. They will also work in 24.1. However, you will have to do some minor modifications. Additionally to that, be sure to have the correct settings of your interpreter. So as you can see here in the script, what we are doing is we import from scripts modules PySide wrapper. Now, in order for this to work, or basically so that your autocomplete will work in the editor, be sure if you go to your Python executable, the Python executable will be the default one from Fidelity. So be sure this one is active. And also be sure that these folders here are added. So specifically, I added the Python folder and the python.scripts folder. You will be finding these both on Windows, on Linux, in the installation directory from Fidelity. The absolute path might differ, but they're there. If you are having trouble with these, be sure to let us know. Also, maybe one last piece of information. As I mentioned, I will provide you also with a more, let's say, complicated case. It's essentially the script that I demonstrated here, where I plot different variables and export them. I have not explained how this is essentially is working. My suggestion is you just take a look in the script, and if you have questions, let us know. The very bottom line is what I do. Some of you may know this table here from Fidelity where we have certain variables. What I do is I collect these variables and then use the interface to ask the user which variables he wants to plot, and then I also export this entire table. So that's what's going on behind the scenes here. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to send us an email, and looking forward to getting in touch with you soon. Bye-bye.